Hi friends, welcome to my studio. I look forward to doing this project together. All right, let's get started. I'm going to be putting in a background of yellow and greens and kind of like a distant glowy sky and maybe some trees that are kind of have that green glow in the background and some brown for the possible trees or branches. But just a very natural background and some more in the foreground. There will be some kind of grasses and that type of thing. I'm using my soft pastels, and the important thing to know, this is different from what I usually do as far as the paper. I usually use pastel matte, but in this case I wanted to use the velour to kind of show you the difference. Hahnemühle Velour is a very soft surfaced paper. It's like almost feels like velour versus the pastel matte, which is a sanded paper. It has a much rougher surface. So it's a little bit different how that the technique that you use on one versus the other. On this, I'm not afraid to use my soft tools. And you'll notice right here where I'm putting circular motions, I want it to have that kind of distant sunlit feel to it. All right, now we're going to be going into the ears just to kind of define that a little bit. I sketched this out in pastel, so I'm hoping that I can retain that little sketch on there. But that's okay. This isn't one that's gonna, we don't want it to stress us out. We're just gonna relax and enjoy it. And it's a bunny rabbit, so how can you not like that? All right, the green paper will be complementary when I take off the tape. So I want that edge all the way around on just about all of the ones I do now. I'll have that taped off so that I can get a nice edge on the finished product. Sometimes if there's not a background, like in the guinea pig tutorial, I won't use the tape. And in some of my work, I'll put this on a board as opposed to taping directly down on my table. So, and really that kind of depends on the type of project I'm doing. With this, it's nothing that complicated with angles and that type of thing. But when I put something on a board, it's because I know I'm going to have to be turning it and getting it at it from different angles. That's not a bad practice to do on a regular basis. You can tape to a board just like you can tape to a table. So, but for the purpose of these videos, I'm pretty much sticking with the taping to the table now, so that it makes it easier for you. Right now I'm putting in a little bit of the brown. This is the underpainting. Just like anything else that we do in pastels, we're going to be putting in an underpainting, a guide kind of to follow, to give us an idea of where those dark and light places are going to be. And we'll be adjusting that so it doesn't have to be exact. At this stage, we're just going to be laying in softly some of these colors, and then we'll blend them out if needed. The blending on the velour, I find, is it doesn't take as long. It's a little bit easier to blend because of the softness of the actual surface. I'm not sure, I prefer to use the pastel matte in most cases, but I've done 2 or 3 projects now with the velour, and one of them was a little gray squirrel that I absolutely love, and just something about giving him the softness of his fur. It worked out on the velour. It just sort of worked for that particular thing. And I think this will be similar, and that's why I chose this particular picture, to use as a guide for this little bunny rabbit. Well, I don't have the reference photo to show you, actually. I might be able to get it loaded in here, and if I do, you'll be seeing it as I'm saying this. But otherwise, really, because I've sketched it out without any kind of tracing or whatever, I just sketched it from what I could see, and the angles, and tried to get the dimensions correct. Sometimes I like to remember my drawing skills. Used to do a lot of just graphite portraits and that type of thing. I've used every kind of method that I've found, such as using the grid method, using just a marking distances from the edge of the paper, and then relationships from one location to the other. Actually did some of that for this guy just to make sure the ears were the right length, and where the head to the nose, the distance there as it relates to the full head. So it gets a little easier if you practice it. If you don't, like to draw, or if you don't feel like you can, there's nothing that says you cannot use some graphite paper. I sometimes say carbon paper, but what I mean is graphite paper. The difference is with graphite paper, you can usually use a kneaded eraser to lighten it once you've applied it. So what I'll do is I'll create the sketch on a piece of paper and then set that graphite paper underneath it, tape both of those down so they don't move around, and then I can, kind of trace that out lightly and have that to use as my initial guide. And the other way that you can do that is by taking a regular piece of carbon paper that you have your sketch either on that, or you have a sketch on another piece of paper. And either one, you're going to put some of your loose pastel. You can use the soft pastel. That's not the best, but PanPastel works really well. Just putting in a light layer of that and then flipping that over onto the page. So you're actually, when you're tracing out your sketch, you're actually getting that pastel transferred onto your paper. So, that really is kind of a clean way to do it as well, because of the fact that, now you've got all of the same type of medium going onto the paper. All right, you'll see me just working on this shading and this underpainting. I'm kind of working top to bottom this time. It just depends. You'll notice in my tutorials sometimes I have to work all over the place, because I don't have a clear reference photo, or for whatever reason it is. With this one, I'm just starting at the top, working my way down, because I want to make sure I can get that feeling of the bunny. So you'll notice I've got the little nose in there. There's a couple colors in there already. He's got a little white area on either side of his nostrils, on his chin, and he's got a little dark area, looks like a little mustache under his nose. He's going to be, the bottom part you'll notice is not as filled out, and that's because we're going to have a foreground with some different kinds of grasses in the front. So I will put all of the materials in the description so that if you want to try something like this, the original image that I used was from Pixabay. And there's a lot of rabbit pictures out there, but make sure that if you're going to use one, that you use it from a source such as Pixabay that allows you to find royalty-free photographs that are not copyrighted, and they'll specifically tell you, if you can use that. You can try not to mimic it identically, but or at least that's my preference. I try to make my art my own, if in some way or another. But by using Pixabay, and I'm trying to remember, there's another one. I cannot off the top of my head remember the name of it. If I do, I'll throw that in the description as well. But essentially, going to that kind of a source, don't just Google, get something off the web, because that could be copyrighted. And, if you get to the point where you want to sell your art, you wouldn't want to sell something that really kind of belongs or originated with somebody's actual private work. And the same goes for any type of other artwork that you see. Like if you want to do this tutorial, because I've sketched this out myself, I'm not providing a sketch. Aside from you know, I don't want you to do something that's identical to this and then try to sell it, because it would not be considered original art unless you do something different. Maybe you've got a different kind of background on it, or you use different colors on your rabbit, you know, whatever it is. That would be okay. But for the most part, most artists are going to tell you that, you know, when they're providing something in a tutorial, or in some type of a book with a guide, then, you know, you don't want to use those when you're selling your art. But you can go to Pixabay and find some really nice reference photos and just kind of do your thing with them. That's what a lot of people do, and then it becomes your artwork. So it's kind of one of those areas that people feel differently about. But all right, you see here, I'm just getting those basic shapes in to identify the structure of this bunny. I refuse to call him a rabbit because he is a bunny. I don't know what the difference is, but I just thought he was so cute. The original was much wider, and it had a tree, I think, or something in it. I cannot remember what the actual original reference photo had in it, but this is the part of it that I wanted to focus on and kind of just not too carefully, just loosely kind of pulled this out of it. So I'm blending different colors in here as well. You're going to have some light areas, some dark areas based on his fur patterns. And it's not as much of an underpainting with this as there might be with some other type of art environment. Because there's going to be a lot of green in the surrounding foliage, that's going to reflect as well. So although normally I would say to definitely blend out so you're completely covering the paper and you're not seeing any of that color come through, in this case I'm not going to stress so much about it, especially in certain areas, because I do want to have the solid kind of background for it. And by background here, I'm talking about what would be ultimately the fur. No, the skin. Oh, it's been a long day. Do you ever have one of those days when you can't have enough coffee? You just feel like, you know, it's the last Saturday after a week off of work where you've worked so hard during your week off, and you just get tired sometimes. This is my, you know, doing artwork and just kind of getting lost in it. That's really the best thing for me, and I hope you can do that as well. It can be very relaxing, and that's why I keep saying don't let it stress you. If it's stressing you, you're doing it wrong. You don't want it to become something that is work, you know? It should be an enjoyable process. I blend with my fingers sometimes, as you saw there, and with longer fur, sometimes it's better to do that because you don't ultimately want to blend the hairs together, but you do want to kind of soften the edges, just like you would have in nature. All right, this is a relatively short video. We're a little bit more than halfway through it, and I do have it sped up, and now I'm putting in some of that greenery I spoke of. I'll be just kind of random. It's like I don't want to necessarily draw the eye to any particular leaves or anything like that, so I'm just kind of going with a loose kind of structure of plants. It's a little prairie kind of scene, I guess, you know, and so different colors of green, different shapes, some of them just looking like blades of grass. But you can see the effect already of having him in that tall grass, how it just kind of adds that little bit of mystery to his being there. I just loved this particular bunny's face, and you know, the way he's just sitting there with the sunlight behind him, and I don't know if it it's early morning or early evening, but I just really like the color scheme and all of this different type of texture that comes from the foliage as well as his fur and the backdrop. I'm putting in some darker colors now, some black, to make sure that we retain that depth and it doesn't look flat where we're adding, you know, all of this greenery. I could have started with the black and gone over it with the greens, but I find with the velour, it's not as layer friendly as the pastel mat would be. So even though I could do it, this doesn't have a tooth like pastel mat does. The velour is a softer kind of surface with its own type of, I wouldn't even call it tooth because that sounds harsh. Think of sandpaper versus silk. Although I wouldn't say the velour is silky, it's soft. It's got a much softer type of surface, and it does feel like velour. The Hahnemühle is the one I'm referring to. I will be trying some of the Canson. I know a lot of people have indicated that it's very similar to the pastel mat, so I will be, when I do decide to try that, I will definitely record and let you see what my findings are on it. But for now, I have a nice pad of this Hahnemühle Velour that I'm going to be using from time to time, just in certain types of quick little projects like this. All right, see, I'm putting in some yellow now, some just to get that, like I said, the variation in the color of the greenery. Some sunlit, maybe blades of grass, or, you know, there in the back, some depth of the darker browns, and some in the front. Now going in and going back to his little face and resting my hand on a piece of paper so I don't smear anything that I've just done. So I can go back up into his face now in the upper areas of the portrait and kind of do all the adjusting that I feel like I want to do. There's, with the Hahnemühle as well as the pastel mat, anything with pastels I have found allow for a lot of adjusting as long as you're taking into consideration the type of paper you're using and what the limitations are, what the benefits are. It's just like anything, you practice and you learn, and that's kind of part of the beauty of art and becoming a new artist. It's just like this whole world out there of possible techniques and methods and processes, different types of mediums. It's just a wonderful place to be. If you have the time to really put into making sure you put a little bit of time aside daily or even a couple times a week to practice and just putting marks down on paper and getting to know your supplies. Speaking of supplies, I do recommend for pastel pencils anyway, I recommend using the Pitt Pastel from Faber-Castell. And the Stabile CarbOthellos. You'll see there on my right, the Conte. That is something that I purchased for some of my projects with charcoal, and it works very well as well to get some of the darker colors in here. All right, taking off the tape, the best part of all. So you can see the finished product. Like I said, it's a relatively quick, easy little snack of a project. Took a lot longer than the video showing, of course, because I had things sped up. But I hope you enjoyed spending the time watching how this is done. And again, I'll put those supplies into the description. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful journey.